Coming to you from haunted Chicago, Illinois, this is Common Sense Paranormal Radio with your hosts with the most ghosts, myself, author, writer, and ghost hunter Rick Hale. Welcome. So last week we had a fantastic show with Mr. Ron Chevry. If you didn't get a chance to watch that, please, or even listen, have a watch, have a listen. Check Ron out. Check his movies out. The Who Incident and the follow-up BTS or Alien BTS, which stands for Behind the Scenes, found exclusively on Found TV. So, my friends, since we met last week, there was an unfortunate incident that occurred in Pennsylvania to one of our own, a paranormal investigator, as well as a podcast host, and I do believe he was an author as well, Mr. Dan Rivera, 54 years old. If you don't know who Dan Rivera is, you probably really, haven't been listening to what it is that has been going on. Now, Dan Rivera is an investigator for NESPR, NESPR, which is the New England Society for Psychic Research, which was started by Ed and Lorraine Warren many decades ago. So what happened with Dan was very tragic. Dan, or Mr. Rivera, mysteriously and inexplicably died while doing the Devils on the Run tour. And he was also the handler of the notorious Annabelle doll, which is a haunted doll, as they say, haunted by the ghost of a girl named Annabelle Higgins. Now, of course, when it comes to a death like this, there is a lot of, I don't want to use the word conspiracy theories, but rumors and things like that that are going around that Mr. Rivera fell victim to the curse of the Annabelle doll. A lot of movies have been made, books have been written, appeared on lots of podcasts over the years. And I am personally not a proponent of that particular doll. I don't believe that it is haunted. And I don't particularly believe that it is, possessed by demons. But a lot of people do. And that is where a lot of the rumors that are coming from, that, somehow he mishandled the doll, mismanaged it, and Annabelle, took its revenge on Mr. Rivera. I don't want to speculate on what it is that killed him, because obviously I am not a medical doctor, but when his body was discovered in his hotel room, according to investigators and police, there was nothing there that would suggest foul play. They put it down as a natural death. So yes, it is a mysterious death. Yes, it is inexplicable. Highly unlikely that it was caused by a doll. As we all know, as human beings, we die. That's just, that's just a fact. There is 100% that you will not make it out of this life alive. None of us. And so what is it that could have possibly had killed Mr. Rivera? I don't want to speculate on that, only because they say that it's going to be 60 to 90 days until the autopsy is finished. And I'm glad that an autopsy is being done so that they will be able to give the family some peace and some rest for the loss of their loved one. But, if a doll doesn't kill somebody, what could have? So let's speculate. It's a possibility that Mr. Rivera had himself a underlying medical condition, something with the heart, an aneurysm. It could have been any number of things. So I would just like to say to the family and friends of Dan Rivera, so very, very sorry for your loss. I hope may he rest in peace, and may you find the peace that you need, knowing that Mr. Rivera has moved on to a much better place. So, we will take a moment of silence for Mr. Rivera, approximately 20 seconds, and then we will move along to our next order of business right here on Common Sense Paranormal Radio. Thank you for partaking in that with me. I hope that the family really does find the truth and the peace that they need. So, moving on to our next order of business. Now, when I started this new podcast, I really pushed people to send me their stories. Like, I want to know what your story is. If you have had any kind of meeting with a ghost, or if you are walking in the forest and you see something out of the corner of your eye, move quickly and it's hairy if you've seen a Bigfoot or other kind of cryptid. Or in Mr. Chevry's case last week, Ron's case, he and his wife Janet have been seeing some very strange things on their property while they were filming the Who incident, as well as Alien BTS, seeing strange things in the sky, maybe coming into contact with an alien life form, or God forbid, somebody who was taken aboard a spaceship in an abduction case. Please, everybody, just send me your story. I'm dying to hear them. I'm dying to read them here on the air, for you as well as for our other listeners, as well as for our other viewers. And I finally got one. And it comes from a longtime friend in Facebook as well as Instagram, Mary Bethune. Mary Bethune is a very she's a longtime paranormal investigator, a longtime researcher and enthusiast, as well as a reader and a listener. Somebody who's been with me as a reader and a listener for many, many years. And thanks to Mary, she has sent me a story, and I got to tell you guys, I'll be goddamned if it's not the weirdest story I have ever heard. So we will get started on this. Mary says, "Hello. So glad you are up and running again. My experience was with a praying mantis being or alien." I mean, just that opening alone is enough to say, wow, what is it that this lady had dealt with? Must have been extraordinary. She goes on to say, "Our paranormal team, Olympic Peninsula Paranormal Society, was investigating the site of one of the worst avalanche disasters in history. Wellington was established in 1893 along the Great Railroad Pass in the Cascade Mountains. 96 lives were lost in 1910. Now, I have heard about Wellington for years. When I co-hosted Paranormal Underground Radio, the other host on the show, Karen Frazier, had actually written a book on the subject, and it was a very, very good book. I enjoyed it thoroughly, still have it, and it was a heartbreaking episode in the history of the great state of Washington. She goes on to say, "We had investigated all night and returned to our campsite around 4:30 a.m. As we pulled in, there were a bunch of people dancing naked around a big fire. I thought, whatever. I don't know about you guys, but I kind of wonder, would I have joined in on that naked dancing? It's possible. I can't say that it wouldn't be. But hey, she didn't, so let's go on further with our story. But this is relevant to the sighting. Finally got into my tent and was winding down. I heard heavy running and fast breathing. I believe heavy footsteps. Someone sounded scared. I got out of my tent and saw a huge praying mantis being chasing a naked man. Obviously, well, presumably, somebody who is partaking in the naked bonfire dancing. It looked exactly like you'd think. Same green color. It sat back a bit on its hindquarters, and it was at least 10 feet. Now, I don't know about you guys. If I saw a 10-foot praying mantis alien, I think I would be probably running as fast as I could possibly run. It was right behind this poor guy. I was stunned. My brain kept going, this is a puppet. This can't be real. Which is, I think, a lot of people ask that same question or say that kind of statement whenever they have a weird paranormal experience. This can't be real. I can't be really seeing this. I must be going crazy. People are going to think I'm nuts if I tell them about this. She goes on further to say, I wasn't high. Good for you, Mary. Maybe a bit sleep deprived. I watched as it ran through the campsite and off into the distance. I went back in my tent, trying to figure out what had happened. The next day, I walked around looking for any evidence, talked to a few other campers, and no one heard or saw anything unusual. I mean, that in and of itself is very strange, because you would think that there would be other witnesses to a 10-foot praying mantis being chasing a naked guy throughout a campsite. But I digress. The campsite where the naked dancers were was empty. You could see the remains of a big bonfire. To this day, I can't explain it, but it is my top 5 weird experiences ever. Thanks, Mary Bethune. Thank you so much, Mary, for sending that story in. That story is bizarre, to say the least. But it's really interesting because at one time, praying mantis type beings, or called insectoids, have been reported by many abductees and experiencers over the years. Of course, those kind of aliens have given way to the more popular Greys or Nordics. However, there was a time when many people were claiming to have been abducted or coming into contact with one of these giant insectoid or praying mantis type beings. Now, I know Mary, and I believe her that she saw something. What that something is, hey, I don't know. But all I know is that must have been one hell of a naked bonfire dance and possibly drum circle to invite something like a praying mantis being into the fold. So, Mary, keep up what you're doing. You're doing a fantastic job as a paranormal investigator and researcher. And everybody else, please keep those stories coming. I want to hear them. I want to hear your story. I want to read them on air. So if anybody is interested, please send them to my email address, and that is rickehale46@outlook.com. Once again, that is rickehale46@hotmail.com. And please keep in mind, and I don't quite understand this, but for whatever reason, a lot of people forget that E between the Rick and the Hale 46. Always remember, put the E. So, once again, thank you so much, Mary, for sharing your story. It was definitely strange and definitely bizarre, and one of the weirdest stories that I have ever heard. And I have been investigating and researching the paranormal, for well over 40 years now. So, let us get on to the main course of this week's show. Now, as I mentioned, I've been involved in the investigation and research of the paranormal for a very, very long time, for a little over 4 decades now. And I have come across a lot of misconceptions concerning the paranormal. And usually I do have, every once in a while, I'll have somebody ask, hey, Rick, you've been doing this a while. Tell us, what are some of the most common misconceptions that people have concerning the paranormal? Well, my friends, I have come up with 8 very common ones. that a lot of people believe, and even people believe in the paranormal community, which is kind of strange. So basically, I mean, let's face it. We are involved in a field of research that is, by its very nature, filled with misconceptions. There are literally millions of websites out there filled with not only misconception, but straight up misinformation. However, they are also filled with a person's own personal beliefs. This, unfortunately, is the nature of the beast. Although I am a firm believer that nobody, including yours truly, can really say they are an expert in the matters of life, death, and the afterlife. You will never hear that word come out of my mouth. I will never refer to myself as an expert, because I just don't believe that's the case at all. I have always held the belief that the experts are dead, meaning you won't understand fully until you die. It's kind of a bummer, but it's a fact. I'm sorry. You have to die before you understand, before you have a full understanding of what it is that is life, death, and the afterlife. That's just a fact. Sorry, but yeah. With that being said, there are a number of misconceptions that can be cleared up by using good old-fashioned common sense, research, as well as experience. These are misconceptions that unfortunately have been created by the pop culture status that the paranormal now, I guess you could say, enjoys or doesn't, depending on your point of view. But here is a list of the top 8 misconceptions that I observed after many years of working in this field and in this community. We're going to start off with El Numero Uno, and the most important one, and I think that this is the one that even that new investigators should have a very, very deep understanding of. You don't, and let me repeat, you don't always catch world-shattering evidence upon your first visit to a haunted location. This is one of those misconceptions that can be cleared up with experience and common sense. Ghosts, spirits, spooks, specters, whatever it is that you may choose to call them, well, if it's true that before they were classified as breathing impaired, that they were a human intelligence, they're not circus monkeys. They're not there to be at your beck and call and to do parlor tricks, I guess you might say. You cannot demand that they show themselves, especially if this is an intelligence that has lasted the death of the body. In many respects, spirits at a location might not even want you there. Believe it or not, that's true. I have been on many investigations where I am dealing with an intelligent haunting, and even though the family, and I believe their stories, the family says, oh my God, we had something fly off the wall. Oh my God, I saw a ghost out of the corner of my eye. All of a sudden, the house just goes completely still, completely quiet. And that's actually a lot more common than you may think. I will actually tell a client on the phone that do not talk about me and my colleagues and friends coming to your house to do an investigation. I want it to be a complete surprise for whomever it is that they may have in their home haunting their house. So yeah, I want them basically caught by surprise. So another thing to consider is that you may actually have to go back several times. There have been a number of investigations that I've done over the years in people's homes as well as businesses where I've had to go back 2, 3, 4, 5 times before I even so much saw something or captured any kind of evidence. That is actually quite common. And it is something to keep in mind that, like I said, with number one, you are not going to catch world shattering evidence. This is not a television show where either they make something happen or something is faked to seem like it happened. This is real life. And it's very important that when you are in somebody's home doing an investigation, that you are respectful, not only of the homeowner or the resident or the business owner, but also of the ghosts and spirits that reside there as well. Number two, psychics do not predict winning lottery numbers. The question, now, if that person claims to be psychic, why can't they predict winning lottery numbers? Now, this is a question that gets me very riled up. I've had the opportunity of working with a few very talented psychics over the years. To be perfectly honest, I've met dozens of people who claim to have a gift, dozens of people who are very well-meaning, while others have been predatory. Taking the money of people and then claiming that they come into contact with their loved ones. To be perfectly honest with you, over the years, I have worked with about that many psychics that I could say are real, that, I can count on like one hand. And I think that any paranormal investigator or researcher would be honest about that, saying that, I really have never met too many people. Now, this is a question that I hear quite regularly from people in and out of the field. If a person outside of the field asks this question, it really is acceptable because they don't know. They don't really understand. They don't get it. They don't understand how psychic ability works. However, with that being said, when a person claiming to be a paranormal researcher asks, my only response is, I guess you really haven't done your homework, dude. Psychic, as a term, it's an umbrella term for a plethora of different kinds of abilities. The majority of psychics working in the field are ones that are in contact with the spirit world. They are there as kind of like the middleman to bring a message from the dead to the living. They're a conduit of that spirit's message. So basically, it's true to say citizens of the spirit realm, the ghost in your house or the spirit in your business, they really just don't care about winning lottery numbers because they're dead. Why do they care? They don't care. They are more concerned with getting a message across and not personal financial gain. And that is exactly why a psychic cannot tell you the winning lottery numbers, because nobody cares. Now, this is a big one. This is one that I don't want to say take personally, but I've done a lot of research in. And poltergeists. Poltergeists are not demons or ghosts. This is a subject that I have written on extensively over the years. And believe it or not, it is a huge misconception. So let's take a look at the difference between poltergeists, demons, and ghosts. Starting with ghosts. Presumably, ghosts, that is the etheric energy of a human being that either gets caught in an environment and then replays itself over and over again, or it is the intelligence that has managed or somehow survived the death of their body. That is a ghost, and that is a spirit. There is a difference. Demons. Demons is that's a sketchy subject, friends. It's one that I am very, very skeptical of because I'm really not a religious person. I was at one time, but not really so much anymore. However, let's look at what demons are. Every single culture that has ever existed, that has ever trod the face of this earth, has stories and legends and mythology concerning evil or retrobate spirits that definitely do not have mankind's best interests in heart or in mind, for that matter. Their mission is to destroy life, bring people into things like just, well, I mean, to destroy people's lives. They don't care about you. What do they give a shit for? They're from like the pit of hell or from some realm of existence that where it's nothing but pure evil. Poltergeist, on the other hand, is an entirely different situation. With poltergeist outbreak, it has been known in many years in parapsychology as recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. Now, what exactly is recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, and how does it cause a poltergeist? Well, recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, it's a latent psychic ability that has gotten completely out of hand. So rather than being a ghost, which haunts a place, or a demon, which their whole mission is to just make your life shit and a living hell. A poltergeist is actually energy that comes from a person who is going through some kind of mental or physical travail. They used to say that it was a young person going through the trials and tribulations of puberty. However, we now know that that's really not the case. Anybody who has a latent psychokinetic ability could allow that stress and that tension to build up in such a way that it finally explodes out into the physical environment and causes, personal injury, causes things to fly off walls, causes furniture to get upended and tossed around a room. And unlike demons or ghosts, which appear to have an intelligence to it, most people who experience a poltergeist, actually the overwhelming majority of people who have experience of the poltergeist, comment that when it comes to a poltergeist, it doesn't seem to have any intelligence behind it. It just seems to be energy that is completely out to cause chaos, almost like, well, a bratty child having an emotional meltdown. That's pretty much what people say about poltergeists. So yeah, not a ghost, not a demon, but rather latent psychic ability that somehow comes from a person and explodes into the physical environment, causing a lot of chaos. Number 4, Ouija boards. Oh my God. Whenever it comes to Ouija boards, this is another one where I tend to tread very, very lightly because you have to. So Ouija boards are not, again I say, are not a gateway to hell. Ouija boards have been very popular over the years. There have been hundreds of books, movies, websites, and other forms of mass media that have given the Ouija board almost urban legend status. What we know, or what we think we know about Ouija boards, comes from secondhand information and a whole shitload of fake videos on YouTube, as well as misinformation and a lot of stories that we know are just complete BS. Personally, now this is me, I wouldn't really mess with them. They're not a toy. You kind of throw objectivity out the window whenever it comes to a Ouija board. If you're an investigator, a lot of people will use them, and that's fine. Go for it. Do whatever it is that you will if you want to use one. Whatever. But please be very careful. because you really don't know who or what is coming through. However, if you are a more objective based investigator, it's not good evidence, and nobody is going to look at your evidence from a Ouija board and say, yeah, well, that's a ghost. So again, use at your own risk, but not so much because you could become possessed by an evil spirit, but because people are not going to take it seriously. Number 5. This is another one. Just because a spirit is negative does not make it evil or a demonic entity. Folks, this one really should be common sense. A person's personality does not change after they died. If they were a thoroughly unpleasant person in life, chances are they're still going to be an asshole even after death. And human spirits do not magically become demons. Demons, assuming they even exist at all, are an entirely different class of spiritual being. Now, I myself, as an investigator over the years, I definitely have come across many unfriendly and unpleasant spirits that turned out to be completely human. A lot of times, they just don't want people in what they still perceive to be their home or in their spot. And they will do things to make you think that, oh my God, I'm dealing with something that is evil, and you're pulling your hair out and you're going completely mad. No, it's just a human spirit. Chances are you're not going to deal with a demon because it's incredibly rare. Number 6. Now, this is a big one, especially for old schoolers like myself. You will not get a good education in the paranormal by watching a TV show. I mean, I hate to break it to you. There are certain paranormal TV shows that I do like and I do watch. I do enjoy them. I enjoy them for the location. I guess that's the same thing as saying, oh, no, I don't look at Playboy for the pictures. I read it for the articles. But no, seriously. I don't really watch them because I think that, well, this is, hardcore objective investigation and research going on here. No, I do watch them for the location, and they can be on the entertaining side. So, when it comes to paranormal reality show, what you see is highly edited for content. And I have known people who have been on paranormal TV shows, and they will tell you that maybe 5 to 10% of what you see is really what happened. What you don't see is the hours of research and every move the investigator makes. You don't even get to see all the evidence. Researching the writings of great investigators and field experience will give you that proper investigation. And the people that you should be reading, people like Hans Holzer, people like Peter Underwood. These are the two gentlemen that I got my best education from. And I call them, both of them, two of the greatest teachers I never knew. Moving on to number 7. It's not always a scare a minute. Paranormal TV shows tend to show some rather terrifying moments. Things that really chill you to the bone. Something unexplained happens and people either scream or run for their lives. This, of course, is anything but accurate. Take it from me, a guy who's been in this field for a very long time, and I do not have any reason to steer you wrong or give you inaccurate information. Investigating haunted locations, and I hate saying this, can be unbelievably boring. I mean, oh my God. I can't tell you how many hours I have spent in a haunted place and absolutely nothing happens. And this goes back to one of our previous entries where we talked about how sometimes you have to go back to a location several times in order to get that world-shattering evidence that everybody is looking for. But seriously, chances are you're going to sit alone in a darkened room and experience nothing more frightening than a bang or even a cold breeze. Quick story. I investigated a 150-year-old house in Cary, Illinois. Cary, Illinois is in McHenry County, and I would say maybe it's about 50 miles north of Chicago. And they told us that down in the basement, they had watched a ball, one of their children's balls, roll across the room several times whenever they're down there. So we're like, okay, cool. This is physical manipulation of an object. So I really want to see this for myself. So we sat in this room for several hours with the ball in the middle of the room, waiting for something to happen. And suddenly, the ball moved, rolled ever so slightly across the room. Well, here's what happened. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a poltergeist, wasn't a demon, wasn't anything like this. The family had rats in their basement. And a rat, we actually watched this with our own eyes. A rat would actually dart from one hole in this room in the basement across the basement, clip the ball, and then run into another hole. So we had to tell them that that's exactly what's moving. So they need to moving the ball. They needed to get an exterminator, but that's not to say that that house didn't actually have activity in it, because it did. And it was one of the most extraordinary investigations that I have ever been involved with. On to number 8. Final number 8. And this is one that is going to make some people angry. It's going to make some people sad, but I need to say this. This will not make you famous. I'm really sorry, guys, but it's just not. I once read many years ago that if you're an athlete, you have a greater chance of being struck by lightning twice than going pro. That is a statistical fact. And believe it or not, the same goes for the paranormal. You have folks that have been involved in this field for literally decades, written several books like myself, and are still relatively unknown. And you know what? That's okay. I'm kind of okay with that, personally. Written 4 books on the subject, hundreds of articles, hosted, I think this is my 4th podcast now, and still people are like, Rick Hale, who the hell is that guy? That's okay. You should want to do this work because you genuinely love it, and you have a thirst to understand these unknown mysteries of life, these greater and inexplicable activity, anything from ghosts to psychic phenomenon to aliens to cryptids. That should be your driving force, understanding and exploring the mystery. That should be what it's all about. However, if you should happen to be one of the lucky ones who somehow garners the attention of some television producer, just remember where you came from and don't let it change you. Don't let them make you do things on the television show that goes against not only your personal integrity, but the integrity of the field as well. Because remember, when you're on television, you're not just representing yourself or your group. You are representing an entire field of inquiry that is almost 150 years old. So, there you have it. Those are the 8 misconceptions that I have witnessed and experienced myself working in the paranormal field. So, in summation, just, keep these things in mind. Remember, always do your research. Always do your reading. Don't get your education from a television show. Look up books by authors. who are experienced, who have been in this field for many, many years and have a whole lot of investigations underneath their belt. And just keep all of these misconceptions in mind and don't fall prey to them, and you will be a great paranormal researcher and investigator. So, friends, that is this week for Common Sense Paranormal Radio. I have been your host with the most ghosts, author, writer, and paranormal investigator Rick Hale. Thank you so much for joining me. Next week, I hope to have a guest. Never really know who I'm going to have on just yet, but hopefully, it'll be like Ron Chevry, somebody who really knows their stuff, loves and very passionate, and loves to talk about the subject. So, have a good week, and we'll see you soon.